Fractions.
The scary F word, fractions.
Yes.
Okay, so fractions, the key thing to understand about fractions is what we were just talking about. It really means division, right? And so we saw some fractions. But there's some things we can do with fractions to make the numbers not be quite so big, because sometimes they're big numbers and we want to make them smaller if we can. And so we always like our final answer when we're working with fractions to be what we call reduced. So we want to make them as small as we can so they don't have anything in common, so that they are reduced.
Okay.
Now, again, you can do this on a calculator really easily, but I'm going to show you how to do it. And then if you want some help with how to do it on a calculator, I can show that to you as well. Okay. So reducing fractions is simply done. I love when books say things like that. It's simply done. It's so easy, right? Simply done by dividing both the numerator and the denominator by the same number. The tricky part is figuring out what number you should divide by. Okay. All right. So we have 36 and 84. And we are trying to reduce this. And 36 and 84 are kind of both fairly big numbers, right? So there's a couple ways to do this. What I usually try to do is just think of, can you think of any number that divides into both of these?
12.
9 doesn't. It does go into 36, but not 84. I had to think about it for a while. Okay. 12. Yes, 12 goes into both of them. I thought you guys were going to say 2, because that's kind of,
say 2.
2 is the easy one. So yes, 12. Let me start with the 2 and we'll kind of build from there. So let's say I realize, oh, 2 divides into 36 and 2 also divides into 84. So what we do is divide them both by the 2 that we know goes into both of them. So 36 divided by 2 is 18. And again, you may want to use a calculator for that because that's a relatively big number. And then 84 divided by 2 is 42.
How will you do it with calculator?
I'll show you in a minute. But usually what you can do on a calculator is you just type in, either 36 divided by 84 and hit enter and then change it to a fraction. There's usually a fraction button. Or you type it in as 36 over, again, there's like a fraction bar key, 84, and hit enter, and it'll usually reduce it for you. So like I said, it's pretty easy if you have a calculator. Did you do it? Did you try that or not? Okay, so 18 and 42. Can we think of something else that divides into both of those? Doesn't 2 work again? Right? Because you can keep going. Sure, as many times as you want. As long as it goes into both. So this would be 9 and this would be 21. So notice 2 doesn't work anymore.
3 times 3.
3, right? So if we divide by 3 and 3, 9 divided by 3 is 3, and 21 divided by 3 is 7. And that's as far as we can go because nothing else divides into both 3 and 7. Now, if we would have started with Sally's answer of 12, 36 divided by 12 is 3, and 84 divided by 12 is 7. We could have gone all the way in one step. But a lot of times you don't necessarily see those bigger numbers, so you have to start with some smaller numbers. Okay? Does anybody want to know how to do that on their calculator? Okay.
There's a little, right?
Do you know how to do it?
Can I go and get it?
Okay. So yours, I think you should be able to, yeah, just type in 36. Here's your fraction button here, this ABC button. And then we have 84. I think if we just hit enter, yeah, it changes it to 3/7. Isn't that hard? Actually, you can show her if you want to. And so that's the decimal. And so to change it, oh, see, I would never know that.
To the left. Make sure to lock the door.
Back to
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Oh, here it is. I think this is the S and D. So that S and D button, you need that decimal back. Did you figure out on yours how to do it? Okay, let's see if we can figure it out. So let's do, here's just another way. So let's start with that. So we do this a decimal. And, oh, this one right
Okay,
there.
for the
That's
summer.
B button, fraction decimal. So people second.
No, camera.
It's there. You just have to search for it in a little different spot. You don't have to plug it out. Excellent. Okay, so is everybody okay with how to do that on the calculator? And again, I'm okay with you doing that. This is the process. If you were going to do it by hand, this is the process you would go through. But it's okay to do it on the calculator. Okay? Now, you may want to kind of keep in mind, because like I said, sometimes calculators lie to you if you don't type it into the calculator correctly. But this is the process we would go through. And we'll do a couple more, but you guys can check on your calculators to make sure we get the right answer. Oh, it's blank. Okay, so the easiest operation with fractions, I guess that was the only one we were doing with reducing, but the easiest operation with fractions is multiplication. Okay, so we want to multiply a couple fractions together, and we do that by just multiply straight across. So the top number times the top number, the numerator times the numerator, get an answer, and the denominator times the denominator, get the denominator answer. So it makes it really pretty easy. And here's our blue, multiply straight across. I think that's probably the blanks that are there, right? Multiply straight across.
It's actually typed.
What?
It's actually typed.
Oh, I left it in there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, did I boldface it or something? Oh, okay, I boldfaced it. Because sometimes, what? What?
I haven't been entering.
Oh, it's okay. You can go back and look at Moodle and whatever. Okay, so if we're going to multiply this, we want to multiply straight across, right? Multiplying fractions. So we do 6 times 3, and what do we get there?
35.
That's the bottom, the top. 6 times 3 on the top.
18.
18.
Oh, that's
And then on the bottom, we get 7 times 5, 35. Okay? Now, for those of you who have a calculator, you can type that into your calculator. Now, usually your calculator will have some sort of button that looks like A, B, C, or it'll just have like a fraction, like boxes like this or something, and that's how you type in your fraction. So why don't you try that on your calculator? And if anybody is having trouble, ask me and I'll try and help out.
You want a decimal or what?
No, it should tell you 18 over 35.
Oh, okay.
I just want to make sure that we can do that on the calculator. Was everybody able to get that answer? You've got a trickier calculator back there, I think. Were you able to get it or not?
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a look. All right, let's see what here's our fraction button, this ABC. So we're going to type in 6. And you push that fraction. Go ahead and push the fraction button. So that's saying fraction, and then 7. Push column. This is saying for 3 over 5. So you push your 3.
Like that.
Equals 18 over 35.
I think I added
Does that make sense? Was everybody able to get the 18 over 35?
Yes.
All right. Good. So multiplying, even if you don't have a calculator, this problem is pretty easy because you just multiply straight across. I don't know why I have these disappearing things here. Now, when we multiply, sometimes it's going to be easier to reduce before we multiply. Remember how we reduced? And the nice thing is we can reduce up and down with one fraction, or we can actually reduce diagonally from top to bottom with separate fractions. And I'll show you why that is in just a second. Is there anything here for you guys to fill in?
Before.
Oh yeah, before we multiply. Okay. So this one, now I want to show you something. What did we say that we do? Multiplying? Multiply straight across, right? So this would look like 25 times 32 over 24 times 55, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, do you see how they're now all together and it's one fraction, something divided by something else? So I can reduce here from these two if I want to, because eventually they're going to be one above each other anyway. So that's why we're allowed to do this even with separate fractions, because everything on the top is going to end up being on the top and everything on the bottom will end up being on the bottom. So let's go back to here. What do we see that maybe between these two we could cancel or reduce by?
5.
5 goes into both of them, right? So I'm going to divide by 5 and divide by 5, and I'm just going to put that down here, and we're going to get 5, 25 divided by 5, and then 24, and then 32, and then 55 divided by 5 is 11. Okay, so do we see anything this way that we could divide by? Both of them.
8.
Does that make sense? 8? Now you could start with a 2, but 8 is the biggest number that we can divide by for both of those. So we're going to divide by 8 and divide by 8. And we're going to have 5 over, and we still leave 11. So 32 divided by 8 is 4. 24 divided by 8 is 3. Do we see anything else top to bottom that we can reduce by? No.
No.
So now we just multiply straight across. What's 5 times 4? 20. And what is 3 times 11?
33.
33. So our final answer there is 20 divided by 33. Now again, if you do that on a calculator, or if you do this and get this really big number, this would be 800 over I don't know what this is. Something big.
What is it?
132, I think. No, that's not.
1320.
1320? No, it's close. I'm just missing a 0. 132. Okay, so 1320. And then you could reduce that big number and it would get you down to this. Okay, so you don't have to do it in this order, but this is just to make the number smaller right away.
Do you always reduce?
You always want to reduce, yeah.
Oh.
But I would say type it in your calculator.
Okay.
And your calculator reduces automatically for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in United States education system, we always use calculator for those.
Well, in the United States education system, probably no. But in
Always.
this class,
Okay.
yes.
Higher class. Okay, I got it. I mean, you want to teach the
Yeah, and that's why I'm
Lower
going through.
grade.
I'm going through the rules so that you know there are rules. But really, the main thing for you guys is not how to do
Yeah.
arithmetic. The main thing for you guys is how to use the tools and then get to the other stuff.
I just asked.
The other stuff. Well, and you do want to know the rules because eventually,
I'm not ready
like
for
when you
that.
guys get to college algebra, you're going to want to know some of these rules because they apply to not just numbers, but they also apply to, I know the scary word, variables that are the letters, and so they apply to
Are
those
you
too.
gonna
So
teach it in spring?
they haven't asked me yet, but I did last spring, so maybe.
Yeah.
All right,
When I get it over with.
you get it over with. All right. Well, we got to get through this one first, and then we'll take on that one. One challenge at a time, right?
Yes.
Okay. So with dividing fractions, it's similar to multiplying with one additional step. Remember how with adding negative numbers, or sorry, with subtracting signed numbers, we added the opposite. So after the minus sign, we change it to adding and change the sign. We do something very similar here with fractions. When we're dividing fractions, we leave the first number alone again, and then we take the reciprocal of the second fraction. Does anybody remember what a reciprocal is? It's where we flip the fraction, and the numerator becomes the numerator becomes the denominator goes up as the numerator. So you'll see that in just a second. Is there anything here that you guys need to write down that I need to
It's
worry?
already in it.
It's already in there. Excellent. So again, remember that this division bar means divided by, right? So to rewrite this, this is 21 over 16 divided by 28 over 6. Does that make sense? Now, the rule tells us, the rule that we want to mention and know that there is one, says that we leave the first fraction alone. 21 over 16 stays there. Then we change it. Instead of dividing, we're going to multiply. And then what did that rule say we should do to that second fraction? Instead of 28 over 6, that second fraction becomes 6 on the top, 28 on the bottom. Okay? Now, if we want to do our reducing, do we see anything that we can reduce both of these by?
Yes, 7.
A 7. So that's going to become 3 and 16. And 28 divided by 7 is 4. So we've got those corners. Can we reduce these two by anything?
2.
2. Right? This time that's the biggest thing. So divide by 2, divide by 2. So the 3 is still there. This becomes an 8. And that's a 3, 6 divided by 2, and a 4. Now, be careful. Because when we start canceling things, sometimes we cancel too much. We cannot cancel the 8 and the 4. Does anybody know why?
Because they're in a
Yeah, when you cancel, it has to be top to
Top
bottom.
and
You can't
top.
cancel like the 2 tops or the 2 bottoms, right? Because what are we going to do now? Multiply 3 times 3 and get 9, and multiply 8 times 4 and get 32. If we tried to reduce these two, that would just make the bottom smaller. It wouldn't do anything to the top. Okay. Now, with a calculator, go ahead and check this one out. Can you type that one in?
So we type 21 divided by 16 divided by 28 by 6.
Okay, now if you use your divided by sign, you have to be a little bit careful. If you use your fraction, 21 fraction 16 divided by 28 fraction 6, you'll get the right answer. If you use divided by and divided by and divided by, the calculator doesn't know that you're dealing with fractions. And so it will do, we'll talk about order operations later, but it'll do it in the wrong order.
So 21
So-
fraction 16.
If you use the divided by sign, you can actually do that as long as you put parentheses around your fractions. And then it will do, then it knows which one to deal with at a time.
You can do
Okay.
that too.
Yeah. So if you're
I
dealing
love
with,
calculators.
what's that?
I love calculators.
You love them? And did you get the right answer?
Yeah.
See? Right.
So
Well, you know how to use it.
Yeah.
and I didn't know, but now.
Yeah. All right. Was everyone able to get that 9/32 answer? Anybody need me to help them out? Because the calculator doesn't help if you don't know how to use it, right? We were just talking about that. So it's important that if you're going to use it, you know how to use it. All right. If anybody needs some help, I guess if they don't want to ask right now, they can ask me during the break. After I go to the bathroom, because I drank a huge drink and I'm going to have to go to the bathroom during the break. So that's what happens. Come and go summer deal and buy whatever size for $1. It's killing me right now. Okay. I love the deal, but anyway. Okay, so to add or subtract fractions, and again, you will be able to do this on a calculator. But if we're going to use the rules to add or subtract fractions, we first have to find what is called a common denominator, and they use the least common denominator because the smaller it is, the better for us. The numbers are smaller then. So there are several ways to find the least common denominator. That's what LCD stands for. Unless you're talking about electronics, then it stands for something else. One way is to find the smallest multiple of the largest denominator that you can also divide the small denominator by. That is a lot of words. That gets a little bit crazy. Okay, so let's go through this and let's see if we can find the least common denominator of the 8 and the 12. So what they're saying to do is to find the multiples of 12. So 12 times 2 would be 24. And then 12 times 3, we did a little bit earlier, that's 36. Anybody know 12 times 4?
48.
48. And 12 times 5 is 60. And we could keep going, right? But let's see if there are any of these that we can divide by 8. Can we divide 12 by 8? No. Can we divide 20, and I should say evenly? Can we divide 12 by 8 evenly? No. Can we divide 24 by 8 evenly?
Yes.
Yes. How many times? 3 times? And that really doesn't matter. But once we find one that works, that's our least common denominator. It's not always the second one, unfortunately. Sometimes we have to go a little ways. Okay?
Okay, so first
Can you start over?
Yeah.
So,
Sorry.
So what we did is we picked the bigger. We started with the bigger one
okay.
Why did you pick the big one? That's just the rule.
because it'll get you further in a shorter amount of time because
Okay.
the bigger one just goes farther each time.
Okay.
So we start with the bigger one. 12 times 1 is just 12. So we start with 12. And then we do 12 times 2 is 24. And 12 times 3 is 36. And then we did 12 times 4 is 48. And so we just were writing down what are called the multiples of 12.
Well,
And then we just started looking and said, okay, which of these numbers is also a multiple of 8? And we figure that out by dividing. So 12 divided by 8 doesn't work out evenly. So it's not 12. But 24 divided by 8 comes out to be exactly 3. So that's how we know that our least common denominator is 24. And again, you can do the dividing with a calculator. You can do the multiples with a calculator.
How will you do this for a calculator?
This one, you'd still have to, if you do it this way, you'd still have to kind of write down, you'd have to do on your calculator 12 times 1, 12 times 2, 12 times 3, 12 times 4, and then divide them, 12 divided by 8, 24 divided by 8, and see which one comes out evenly that way. This one does take, you have
It's
to,
more difficult.
yeah, this one is a concept you have to
Yeah.
actually go
Do
through the
it
process. You have to go
either
through the
way.
process a little bit. Okay, so once we have that least common denominator calculated, we add or subtract fractions the same way that we add or subtract integers. If they're the same sign, we just add them together. If they're different signs, they fight against each other, and the bigger one wins, and we subtract the two numbers. Okay? As long as they have that common denominator. If they don't, we've got to get the common denominator. So let's take a look at this one. Notice these have a common denominator, right? They're both 8. So what we do, we add 7/8 plus 3/8. We add the 7 and the 3, and we get what? 10. Now here's the part you have to be careful of.
You don't add
The denominator stays the same. It had to be common, so it stays common all the way through. So it's also an 8. So this has to be an 8 with this one, and then this one has to be an 8 also. That's the common denominator. Yes. I can barely say that word. All right.
4 times 2.
And English is my first language, and I can barely say denominator.
That's why I love. I'm like, now it's not enough. I'm not
Oh,
even gonna try.
I understand. So looking at this though, is there anything that we could reduce this by?
Yeah, 2.
They're both divisible by 2, right? So divide by 2, divide by 2. Those are supposed to be division signs. And we would get 5 on the top and 4 on the bottom. Okay. Now, I would say go ahead and try it on your calculator. Do the addition and make sure you can get that answer. Your calculator might tell you 1 and 1/4. These are the same thing. 5/4 is the same as 1 and 1/4. One is just written as what we call an improper fraction. One is written as a mixed number. You get it?
Yeah.
Isn't that nice?
I just love the calculator.
Calculators are so wonderful, aren't they? Okay, was everybody able to get that? Now, did anybody's calculator give them this number or this one? Which one did you guys get? The 5/4? Didn't you got this one? Okay. Now, your calculator will switch that if you want it to. So if you see a button that looks like something like, let me just look at your calculator, then I'll be able to tell you what it looks like. Okay. A, B, C, D, E. Okay, so you have the same calculator, I think, as you do. So it looks like A, B, C, and then it has these like double arrows, and then D over E. So this is how you switch from a mixed number to an improper fraction, or from an improper fraction back to a mixed number.
So how would you want to see it?
I don't care.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. Now, on the homework, it may say write it as a mixed number and improper fraction, but honestly, I'm going to give you credit regardless of which way you do it. So the mixed number is when you have an integer with a fraction. So this is the mixed number. And then this one is what we call an improper fraction. And the improper fraction just means the top number, the numerator, is greater than the denominator. So it could be turned into. If you see something like this, 2/3, that's not an improper fraction or a mixed number, because the only way you can write it is 2/3. You can't change it to this because it's not big enough to do that. Okay.
Okay, so if
Yeah.
I want to change it, we just press the number. Like,
So if you have this,
Mhm.
you should just push, I think you have to push the second and then that one. Go ahead and try that and make sure it works. And then I think you have to hit enter. There you go. Okay. And again, I don't really care which method you use or which way you write the answer. I want to make sure that you know how to get the answer, because they both are the same. They're equal to each other, just a different way of writing it. It's like saying I have 5 quarters or I have $1.25. It's the same thing. Okay.
Oh. I'm just kidding. That's
Alright.
what it means.
I have a dollar. I have a dollar and a quarter, or I have
That
5
makes
quarters.
more sense.
Okay, I wasn't even thinking that it was quarters up here, but it was. So okay, now this one, same denominator, right?
Mhm.
And we're subtracting. So what are we going to do? Well,
Minus
Subtract.
nine.
yeah, the denominator is going to be what?
6.
6. We don't change that, right? Common denominator stays the same, common. And then you're right. Somebody said it. We do 13 minus 9, and we get 4. And again, is that something we can reduce?
2.
Mhm.
Reduce by a 2. And when we do that, what do we get on the top?
2,
2. And what do we get in the denominator?
3.
3. And we can't do anything with that. It's just, that was even the example I used. It's 2/3. You just leave it as 2/3. So again, I would say, try it on your calculator. Make sure you can get that answer, 2/3. And give me a thumbs up when you get it. Got a couple. You don't have to, you're just like I do in my head. Okay.
Can you show me how to?
Sure.
Um,
Well, probably.
Order.
You haven't asked me yet. So I'm assuming I can probably show you that. Because I'm used to these kind of calculators.
here's the answer, right?
Okay.
If I would have switched to.
The other one, okay, now this one you can't because the top.
Oh,
the
that's
two.
true.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But if you got the 5/4, so here, let me see if we can just type it in. So if we have 5/4, so if it's written like that, I think we'll just push this, and then it says ABC.
Did I go to
It's
sleep?
a little blue light, blue writing. is what I
What
would
time did I
say.
get up? Mhm.
And then push
I
enter.
think it was 4:30.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So here it's got to be common. When they don't have a common denominator, we already mentioned that.
Okay.
When they don't have a common denominator, we have to get a common denominator. Because once we have one, it's fairly easy, right? But if they don't have one, we have to get one using that little method we used with the 12 and the 8. Okay, but again, the calculator will do this for you, but I'm going to show you how to do it by yourself if you need to. All right, we've got 5/6, so we need to use the 6 because that's a denominator, and 4/9. The problem is the 6 and the 9 are not the same, and we need them to be the same.
So you picked the biggest one, right?
So we start with the biggest one, 9, and I'm just going to go one at a time. Can 6 divide into 9 evenly?
No.
Not evenly. 1.5, but not evenly. So what's 9 times 2 then?
18.
18. Can 6 divide into 18? Whoops.
Yes.
I underlined the answer. Okay. Yes, it does divide into the 18 evenly. How many times? 3. Now this is important for this reason. What we're going to do is we're going to turn this into something over 18, and we're going to turn this into something over 18. So do you remember earlier when we were reducing fractions and we divided them both by the same number, top and bottom? We can do the same thing in the opposite. We multiply them both by the same number. So here's the question we ask. What do I have to multiply 6 by to turn it into an 18? 3, right? So if I'm going to multiply this by 3, what do you think I would have to multiply the top one by? 3 also. Just like when we divide it by the same thing both times, you have to multiply by the same thing both times. So this becomes 15/18.
Okay.
Now, if you want to believe me, that's fine. If you don't believe me, if you take your calculator and you actually do division, not a fraction, but if you just do 5 divided by 6 and look at that answer, and then you do 15 divided by 18 and look at that answer, they are the same thing. They are equal to each other. Okay? Now we've got to change this 9. How can I change the 9 into an 18?
Times 2.
Times 2? And so what do you think we have to do to this 4 up here?
Times 2.
Times 2 also. And we get 8/18. So now they have a common denominator, and our denominator for the answer will be
18.
18. The top will be 23, but the denominator will be 18. That doesn't change, common denominator. And then on the top, 15 plus 8 is 23. And again, you could look at reducing. You can't reduce this one. And that would be our answer. Or again, if you do this on a calculator, go ahead and try it. Your calculator may give you 1 and 5 over 18, which would be the mixed number version. These are, again, these are equal to each other. One is just an improper fraction, one is a mixed number.
So that's the reason why we were looking for that LCD
Yes.
in order
So that
to
we
be
can
able,
get that.
so we can get the, how do you say it? No.
Denominator.
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 If you slow it down, but I'm usually saying it fast, so I just lose half of the word.
I can't say it.
Okay, so was everybody able to get this answer on your calculator? No? Okay, let's take a look.
No. Sally. Be nice, Sally. Be
Oh,
nice.
what about that?
Nice to meet you.
Oh, yeah.
Because we know.
I get that.
That's probably it.
I know.
I bet you'll get it this time.
You look at math all day with the kids, right? Yes. That's cool.
So,
You don't help them with
were you
that?
guys all able to get these here, one of these?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Did it work for you now? Okay, excellent. All right. So let's try this one. What happens when we subtract? Well, it's the same rule, right? We need to get a common denominator. I can say it if I go slow. Denominator. All right. Which one are we going to start with here? Because obviously 3 and 6 are not the same. So if we start with 6, does 3 go evenly into 6?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, lucky. We get to start with, we just get to use a 6. Because 6 works for both,
Okay.
right? So that's our magic one. So what do we have to multiply 3 by to turn it into a 6? 2. So we're going to multiply by 2. And so what do we have to do to this 2 on the top? Multiply it by 2. And so it's going to become what? 4. So 2/3 is equal to 4 over 6. What do we have to do to this one?
Six.
Nothing, right? It's already a 6. I mean, you can think of it. You're going to multiply by what? 1. So you don't have to do anything. It's already a 6. So we just put the 1 there. Does that make sense? You don't have to change that one. That's the nice thing about, oh, it's 6 already.
Okay.
Now we subtract. So what is our denominator going to be down here? 6. It doesn't change. And what do we get on the top? 3. Can we reduce that?
Yes.
By what?
By
2?
1.
No. Sorry.
Well,
No.
You're giving me
By 3.
answers. You're giving me the answers that it's going to turn into. But
sorry.
what are we actually dividing each of these
2.
by?
2.
Not a 2.
3.
A 3, right?
I
3.
said 3.
I knew
No, no.
you.
You said a 1 the first time.
And I
So-
said 2.
Divide by 3, and what do we get on the top?
1,
1, and divide by 3 on the bottom, and what do we get down here?
3.
You're subtracting
2.
2,
Oh.
right? So does it make sense? 3/6 is 1/2. If you've got a pie that has 6 pieces and you take out 3 of them, haven't you taken out half of the pie? Right?
Yes.
I usually use pizza. I don't know why I use pie now. Okay. So again, can we do this on a calculator? Absolutely. And we should be able to get the answer. Okay. So there is the second section. Again, these problems that I said, it says optional assignment because these are not required. And you can use your calculator on them and you can do the practice. And I would do the practice first before I go to take the test.